My name is Juan. I'm a, I'd say I'm a Novato native, but I was born in Yucatan, Mexico. I moved to Novato when I was like around 7 years old, and I just kind of went to all the schools around here. Graduated high school back in 2016. Then joined the military right out of high school. Did the army for 3.5 years. And then eventually, like once my service was over, moved back to Novato and have been more or less like in the area in Marin ever since.
Nice. And when did you first come to CrossFit Novato specifically?
Yeah, so I'd say probably like maybe a year and a half ago. Somewhere around a year to a year and a half ago, maybe even more now. Time is so subjective nowadays.
Yeah. And what brought you here?
So when I got out of the military, when I got out of the army, I wanted to kind of stay active. I wanted to just stay in good physical health, as well as just like overall like in holistic good health. And the physical aspect is just one part of it, and I knew I wanted to kind of stay healthy, stay active, which is I guess essentially like what brought me to CrossFit Novato. And like having done kind of CrossFit style workouts in the military. I knew that's something that I really liked. The sandbag carries. Like doing like drills with like my battle buddies. Like just like doing like firemen carry and stuff like that. So I knew that like CrossFit had a lot of that. And that's pretty much like kind of where it all started, I'd say.
Yeah. And what do you feel like has kept you here? Like that's what you were looking for, and then you came to CrossFit Novato. What was your experience once you got here?
Yeah, it was. I feel like with anything new that anyone does, it takes some getting used to. But the experience overall was amazing, really. Just like a very welcoming community, and that alone was one of the reasons why I kept coming back. Just like having that like community here, that's just again just very welcoming, and you once you start coming, you start making friends, and like you start seeing people, the regular people that like are always here, depending on the times you come in, and you start to get to know everyone, and it's just a overall great community, very supportive in different ways. You from the workouts, like things get tough, in a workout, but you have like people there like cheering you on, like you got this, like you can do it.
And tell me a little bit about life outside of the gym during this time.
During the time that like I started coming here?
Yeah, I guess you were saying that like you were going to, I think, community college when you started here. Mm-hmm. So what's happened since then? Like what has life looked like outside of the gym?
Yeah, so I got to a point like prior to like I wasn't really like staying active. There was just kind of a period of time where I was just like not really like taking care of myself in the best possible ways, including just like working out and like everything else. And around that time is like I started going to College of Marin, and like I kind of had that kind of like that self-talk, like, okay, like we got to do things differently, and what does that look like? What can be done differently? What do I have, control of, to go about things, in a different manner, in regards to, as well as like, what do I want to get out? What do I want from this part of my life? What do I want to get out of, you know, this period of time, and how am I going to do that? And one of those things that one of those answers was, my physical health, as well as just I strongly believe that your physical health is like correlated to everything else. Your emotional, mental, spiritual health. Everything. In my eyes, it's a holistic health, and one is connected to the other. So yeah, one of the answers was like, okay, well, I have to get active. I have to you know do X, Y, and Z, and I started thinking, well, what is it that that I have enjoyed doing in the past, as far as like working out, and I recalled my time in the Army, like just like doing those types of workouts. So you know essentially why you know I started coming to CrossFit Novato, and it really, like, what I got out of it was just a lot of growth. you know I think around the time that like I started coming, like that first week, that's when they were putting up like the mural, that's there, when you come in the door. You like, once you make a decision, like the universe conspires to make it happen. And I really like resonated with that. I was like, okay, this is a place where I can be, that kind of aligns with with my personal goals, as well as just like how I am as a person. um, Always like wanting to strive to be better. um, and yeah, just like coming to CrossFit Novato is like really was a catalyst as well for everything else that happened in my life. After that, um, I just started doing really well in academics, like in school. um, and I would come in, at the time I was like a 5:15 a.m. regular. So like I would get like up really early in the morning, like 4:40, get here at 5:15, and start my day with something challenging. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of my day. I would do something like really hard at the beginning, and then go to school, start my day off on a really like powerful note. And that like transcended into like all other aspects of my life, like you know knowing that I could do like something challenging very early in the day. Like, heck, getting up really early, right? It was like something already challenging within itself. But and then doing the workout, and then going to school. And I just kind of, it permeated throughout other aspects of my life. That will, that drive, to okay, this is hard, but I can do it. And I'm gonna do it, get things done. And yeah, I just started doing really well in academics. Got to the point where I like started applying to transfer to different schools. And that was interesting. That was an interesting time, just because during high school, like, I didn't really like have the best grades. Like, I barely graduated high school, I'd say. Like with like 1.4, 1.5 GPA, so like barely getting by. But I did it. And then at that time, like, I started applying to like all these schools. And at first I was like, yeah, like, I'm just gonna not apply to like any really like big schools or anything. Like who knows, like, if they'll let me in. Like, I just had like this, um, I forgot what there's like a term for it, but just like I had like this like ideology of like, instead of growth, like a very limited mindset in some aspects, um, just from, previous, like, how my life was previously, like, growing up and like, with like high school, like struggling. So like I kind of like had a bit of a limited mindset in that, in the sense that like, oh, like who knows, like they probably won't let me in, like, um, but eventually, like, I just went for it, and one of the like, again, like one of the catalysts was, just doing stuff, that was very challenging in the gym. It gave me like a sense of confidence of like, nah, like I'm gonna just go for it, just do it, and see what comes out of it. If it happens, it happens. But again, just coming back to like that quote, once you make that decision, the universe is gonna do anything that it can to make it happen for you. Um, and yeah, like, I started applying, to like all these schools, UCLA, Berkeley, Stanford, San Diego, and like, yeah, eventually, yeah, got accepted to all of them. Um, so like that was it for sure was a little shocking, but at the same time, like a part of me knew wasn't too shocked, just because, like, again, like I'm already like doing like hard stuff, hard things, challenging myself, in the gym, um, doing everything that I can to live a holistic, like wellness, like have holistic wellness like within my life. So I knew that was just, it was a logical, next thing, for my life, is to achieve these things that I had set out for myself. Um, and like, funny enough, like I was close to not applying to Stanford. Um, like I was like really, really close. Like I think I submitted my application like literally the day of, like maybe, a couple hours before it was due. Um, but again, because of that, like that frame of thought that I had, from previous years, like nah, they're not gonna let me in.
It just
And
seemed like so far out there.
yeah, exactly, just like, and just the trajectory of like my life itself was just like, wow, who knows, like,
Yeah.
man, like I barely even graduated high school, so who knows,
Yeah,
and yeah, I was like close to not applying. But one thing I was like, somebody once told me is, let them say no. Don't close the door to yourself.
yeah.
Don't be your executioner. Like just go for it, and then if it happens, it happens. And again, like I made the decision to go for it, and then here I am. I just wrapped up my first year there. Um, and yeah.
That's powerful. That's powerful, like making that decision for yourself. And I think exactly what you said about like not closing the door on yourself, like that's huge. Like how often do we just decide that's not going to happen, you don't even try, and then it's definitely not going to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's powerful. How about now? Like, okay, so that's amazing. Like you just talked about how like you kind of had a change in mindset, it sounds like, right? And CrossFit was a huge catalyst for that change in your mindset that kind of then trickled into your life. How do you feel like now? So you got into Stanford, right? And that was like the thing that you had pushed yourself to do, even though it felt like this crazy thing.
Yeah.
Like, how has life now, like, continuing since then? Like, do you feel like you've continued to kind of have that drive now that you're in Stanford? And like, how has that mentality shift that you had continued to affect your life?
Yeah. I feel like once you go through that, like, initial phase of like, the really challenging part of like changing your mindset, it's like it becomes sort of in a way, it's like sort of a given that, you continue to push yourself. At least, like, for me personally, like, it becomes, it has gotten to the point where, like, I continuously try to challenge myself. And in a sense, like, it's something that, like, I've carried, on throughout, this first year, like, while being there. And yeah, like, things do get tough, because it's, um I'm not gonna lie, like, the academics there have been, you know pretty tough. Like, it's been some, it's not light work. um there's a lot of, like, going the extra mile, as far as, like, studying goes, writing papers. um but one thing that has, like, kind of, you know permeated, through that, like, was that, like, willingness to keep, reaching for reaching higher. That confidence of, like, okay, well, this is tough, but I have the confidence within myself to know that I can do do this thing that's, like, really, you know tough. Like, having that, like, self belief in myself that I can, you know pretty much, like, do anything that I set my mind to. And granted, yeah, there's, like, those days that, I feel like we all have as humans, that, like, some days are harder than others. Some days, it's like, whew, today's is tough. It was hard to get out of bed. But you kind of dig deep into that, like, part of yourself, that, like, that reservoir that I feel like, we all have to, dig in there and, kind of have that self-talk again, like, check in with yourself and be like, okay, well, what are my goals? Now, what am I doing to get to that part, that goal that I have set for myself? And then just, like, chipping away at it little by little. But it has been tough, to, for sure, like, be able to manage all of that. I feel like, there are times, with really, like, everyone's life, like, some things, come up, some things are harder. So for me personally, like, the academics was, got, incrementally, like, harder. And I noticed, like, I began to lack in a few things in, like, other areas. Especially, like, with like, working out, finding the time, like, stay up, at, like, 2-3, like, ungodly hours doing assignments, and then the next day, like, whew, this is tough to get out, and go on a run, get out and, like, actually do a workout. That was a challenge within itself. But I feel like, things like that happen is just, how do we readjust? How can we do things, differently, that are still aligned with the goals that, we have for ourselves. And that's, like, a learning process, I'd say, like, still to this day, like, how to really, like, for myself, like, how to go about that. But, overall, like, it's been something that, like, I'm learning. And I still have that, like, again, kind of that frame of thought, of, like, I can do things that are hard. Sometimes, things do get harder, though.
Yeah.
So it's like, you go through, I feel like there's, like, different phases, of life. Like, you go through a really tough time, and then you get to this point, but then it's like, now it's harder. So now you have to, like, okay, I have to do things differently to then get past this. So, like, I'm, like, on this next level of, like, figuring out how to, achieve the goals that I have for this next phase of my life. But one thing that I can say that does help me is everything else like previously that I have learned, you know, before getting to this point, which was, you know, challenging myself, you know, like with working out, you know, here at CrossFit, Nevada, that like self-talk, that self-confidence, motivation, dedication, you know, things that are like inherently like just like within everyone, you know, to really like tap into.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And if you had like, well, actually, we have I want to touch on two things. So you're talking about like having this mentality and the way you've now approached new challenges and kind of having this like endurance almost of like mental fortitude to just keep going, keep going. How do you feel like, how do you deal with failure in that sense, right? Because it's not always achievement. Sometimes it doesn't go the way you hoped or like along the way. So what kind of mentality do you have around that?
No, yeah, that's important. Honestly, I feel like, yeah, I'd want to like touch on like the fact that like sometimes we just focus, you know, or some people just like try to like focus on like, yeah, the positives, you know, the wins and, you know, all of that, which is, it's important, you know, to highlight that, right? But yeah, perfectly, you know, you put it perfectly. Yeah, there are days that, you know, you don't win. You know, there are days that, like, you know, there are times where, you know, you encounter that loss, you know, in whatever realm that is of your life, right? Funny enough, like, I don't know, I'm a very like reflective person, so like I try to, you know, check in with myself and you know, have that internal dialogue of like, what am I doing, like how am I going about it, like my goals, like all of that, you know, and periodically, you know, kind of, yeah, check in with myself, right? I think it's key. And like funny enough, like today, this morning, before I like, you know, came in here, like this one